SEBI needs financial autonomy to remain effective. A regulatory agency that is at the government's mercy to run its financial and administrative operations cannot be expected to be independent. The centre's decision to clip the wings of the Securities and Exchange Board of India has not gone down too well with its members. Yet, the centre is refusing to budge. In a letter dated July 10, SEBI Chairman Ajay Tyagi said the centre's decision to suck out SEBI's surplus funds will affect its autonomy. SEBI employees had also written to the government with the same concern. As part of the finance bill introduced in Parliament, the centre had proposed amendments to the Securities and Exchange Board of India Act, 1992 that were seen as affecting SEBI's financial autonomy. To be specific, the amendments required that after 25% of its surplus cash in any year is transferred to its reserve fund, SEBI will have to transfer the remaining 75% to the government. On Friday, the government rejected the plea from SEBI's officials asking the government to reconsider its decision, thus paving the way for further conflict. Prima facie, there seems to be very little rationale in the government's decision to confiscate funds from the chief markets regulator. For one, it is highly unlikely that the quantum of funds that the government is likely to receive from SEBI will make much of a difference to the government's overall fiscal situation. So the amendment to the SEBI Act seems to be clearly motivated by the desire to increase control over the regulator rather than by financial considerations. This is particularly so given that the recent amendments require SEBI to seek approval from the government to go ahead with its capital expenditure plans. A regulatory agency that is at the government's mercy to run its financial and administrative operations cannot be expected to be independent. Further, the lack of financial autonomy can affect SEBI's plans to improve the quality of its operations by investing in new technologies and other requirements to upgrade market infrastructure. This can affect the health of India's financial markets in the long run. In the larger picture, this is not the first time that the government at the centre has gone after independent agencies. The Reserve Bank of India and the National Sample Survey Office have come under pressure in recent months, and the latest move on SEBI adds to this worrisome trend of independent agencies being subordinated by the government. The centre perhaps believes it can do a better job of regulating the economy by consolidating all existing powers under the Finance Ministry. But such centralization of powers will be risky. Regulatory agencies such as SEBI need to be given full powers over their assets and be made accountable to Parliament. Stripping them of their powers by subsuming them under the wings of the government will affect their credibility. Power Sharing Agreement, Sudan's New Beginning? The pact between the military and civilian protesters may help Sudan turn a democracy. Sudan's ruling military council and representatives of the pro-democracy movement have signed a power-sharing agreement, signaling that its disputed transition to civilian rule is on track. Ever since President Omar al-Bashir's fall in April amid anti-regime protests, the military leaders who seized power and the protesters have been on a confrontational path. The protesters' demand for an immediate transfer of power to a civilian transitional government to be followed by free and fair elections was resisted by the powerful, deeply entrenched military. As the standoff continued, a paramilitary unit attacked protesters in Khartoum on June 3, killing at least 128 people. But protesters still didn't give up. This, along with pressure from the African Union and foreign countries, appears to have convinced the generals they could not anymore amass absolute power, as they did under Mr. Bashir's 3-decade-long rule. Ethiopian and African Union mediators brought both sides for talks and they reached the power-sharing agreement. Under the deal, a sovereign council of 11 members, 5 military and 5 civilian members and one to be selected based on consensus will rule for over 3 years. A general will lead it for the first 21 months and a civilian leader for 18 months. The security apparatus will be controlled by the military, the ministries will get civilian leaders. While this agreement clearly charts a new course for the crisis-hit country, it doesn't guarantee a smooth transition from military to civilian rule. There still exists deep distrust between the generals and the pro-democracy movement. When protests erupted in December over soaring food prices, Mr. Bashir used multiple tactics, from oppression to introducing changes in the cabinet, to control the situation. But he had to go as the generals turned against him in April. The military council then had an opportunity, like the military in Tunisia after the fall of the dictator Zine El Abidine Ben Ali in January 2011, to return to the barracks and let the civilian leadership assume power and shape the country's future. But Sudan's military not only refused to give up its powers but also massacred the protesters who challenged them. Even though both sides have now agreed to share power, the finer details of the agreement are yet to be hammered out. It is to be seen how the transitional government would find a balance between the military's quest to retain its privileges and the revolutionaries' demand for change. It is still not clear whether the military is ready to support a full democratic transition. The framing of a new constitution will be another challenge as there are different power centers with conflicting interests. More important, there has to be an independent investigation into the June 3 violence, and whoever is responsible should be brought to justice. Then it will at least be a good beginning for a long journey to democracy and accountability. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe the channel to get daily news.